The evening had started the way I liked it, slow, steady, and mine. The soft hum of the TV drifted through the family room, mixing with the warm scent of cinnamon tea cooling beside me. My old recliner, the one with worn arms and a faded floral pattern, wrapped around me like an old friend, still took up space. Outside, dusk settled over the neighborhood, casting long shadows across the hardwood floors. I didn't hear the car pull up, but I heard the slam of the front door. Sharp, careless, impatient. I didn't look up. I didn't have to. I knew the rhythm of that door slam the way one knows the beat of an unwelcome song. My daughter, Mara, entered first. She stood hesitantly in the kitchen doorway, adjusting her purse strap as if bracing for weather. Behind her, my son-in-law, Trent, strode in with a swagger that suggested he believed the house bent around him like iron filings around a magnet. He wasn't a large man, but he walked like he needed more room than the rest of us. A shopping bag hung from one hand, and despite the fact that the house wasn't his, he dropped the bag right in the middle of the hallway as if my home were a storage unit. I kept my eyes on the TV screen, pretending not to sense his annoyance radiating across the room. He didn't tolerate things he couldn't control. With a theatrical sigh, Trent stepped directly between me and the television. The show flickered around his silhouette before he snatched the remote from the table and clicked the screen black. "That's enough of this," he said. "I'm using the family room." He didn't say please. He didn't say excuse me. He didn't even acknowledge that I had been sitting there first. "Mama was watching that," Mara murmured, but her voice barely rose above a whisper. She tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, shoulders hunched, eyes lowered, as if apologizing to the furniture for being present. "She can watch it in her room. This space is for us, not for napping old ladies." My hands tightened around the edge of the recliner, but I didn't stand. I didn't argue. I didn't plead. I simply breathed, letting his words run over me like cold water. For years, I had let it be easier to stay silent. He was the type who grew louder when contradicted, and Mara, you could see the fear bloom in her eyes at even the start of a disagreement. So I had made myself small, convenient, invisible. But that night, something in his tone cracked open a window inside me. Maybe it was the way he called me old lady. Maybe it was the way my daughter didn't lift her head, or maybe it was simply time. I rose slowly, letting the recliner creak beneath me. Trent smirked, expecting me to shuffle away without a word. Instead, I walked past both of them, straight out the front door, keys in hand, coat over my arm. I didn't tell them where I was going. I didn't owe them that. And for the first time in years, the night air felt like freedom rather than an escape. But the next morning, a stranger in a tailored suit would knock on my front door, and his arrival would mark the beginning of an upheaval none of them were prepared for. The morning light spilled into the hotel room like a gentle apology for the night before. I'd booked the place on impulse, no luggage, no toothbrush, just a purse full of keys and a heart that felt strangely unweighted. I slept without dreaming, without listening for footsteps or doors closing too loudly. It was the first uninterrupted rest I'd had in years, and when I opened my eyes, I felt steady. Not young, not bold, just steady. After a quiet breakfast in the lobby cafe, I called a cab to take me back to my house, not to go inside, but simply to see it from the sidewalk. I needed the reminder that the building still belonged to me, even if the people inside had long stopped treating me like the owner. When the taxi turned onto my street, I saw a sleek silver sedan parked crookedly in front of my gate. A man in a crisp charcoal suit stood at the front door, holding a leather-bound folder against his chest. His posture was composed, but his knuckles were pale from the cold. He rang the bell twice, then once more with a deliberate patience. I stayed in the cab, watching. I knew that stance, the steady, formal knock of someone representing rules bigger than ordinary tempers. Mara opened the door halfway, her hair unbrushed, eyes puffy with worry. She clutched the doorframe as if bracing for a storm. "Good morning," the man said. I'm here on behalf of Miss Celia Rowan. My full name, my legal name. It landed heavily in the air between them. Trent appeared behind her, shirt untucked, irritation already simmering in his voice. Who the hell are you? The man didn't flinch. My name is Rowan Pierce. I'm a junior associate with Sterling and Hartwell. I'm delivering a notice. He opened the folder with the calm of someone who had delivered unwanted truths before. Termination of permissive occupancy, effective immediately. You have 30 days to vacate this residence. Mara's hand flew to her mouth. Trent's jaw fell open, then snapped shut in rage. What is this, a joke? She wouldn't do this. She wouldn't dare. Rowan removed a second document and held it out like a judge presenting a verdict. This is her signed directive. The property is solely hers. There is no lease. You've paid no rent for 4 years. From this moment on, you are tenants at sufferance. Even from inside the cab, I could hear Trent's voice spike into a harsh bark of disbelief. Where is she? He yelled. She thinks she can run from this? Tell her to come home right now. Home. The word tasted like rust on his tongue. Rowan, unshaken, simply repeated, "You have 30 days." Mara hesitated, trembling as she reached for the papers. When her fingers brushed the envelope, her wedding ring glinted sharply in the morning light, as if caught between two worlds. The cab driver glanced at me through the rear-view mirror, unsure whether he should stay or pull away. "Just wait a moment," I whispered. Trent snatched the envelope out of Rowan's hand, ripping it open so violently the papers nearly tore. His face shifted from confusion to anger to something like fear, because paper doesn't bluff, paper doesn't cower, paper doesn't forget. I watched from the cab as Rowan gave a small, polite nod, returned to his sedan, and drove off without a backward glance. His job was done. Mine had just begun. "Ma'am," the cab driver said gently, "should I take you somewhere else?" I exhaled. A long, steady breath. "Yes," I said, "take me to Mr. Sterling's office." Because before the day ended, I planned to shut off more than just the family room. I planned to sever every lifeline Trent had unknowingly been living on. Mr. Sterling's office was on the 7th floor of an old brick building downtown. Updated on the inside, but with the kind of solid bones that didn't bow to time or trends. The elevator chimed softly as it opened, and for a moment I just stood there, absorbing the hum of professionalism, the low murmur of telephones, the shuffle of papers, the click of efficient heels on tile. I approached the reception desk, pulling my blazer tighter around me like armor. "Miss Rowan," the receptionist said almost immediately, rising with a warm but respectful smile. "Mr. Sterling is expecting you." Expecting me, not tolerating me, not sighing at me, expecting me. I followed her to a meeting room where sunlight spilled across a polished table. Moments later, Andrew Sterling entered, a tall man in his late 50s with silver hair, sharp eyes, and a handshake that conveyed both firmness and calm. "Celia," he said, "you sounded very clear on the phone. I like clarity." "I've had practice," I replied, sitting straighter than I had in years. He placed a folder in front of me. Rowan Pierce delivered the notice. He informed me of the reaction. "That was predictable," I said, folding my hands. "Trent reacts loudly to everything except responsibility." Andrew chuckled quietly. "Well, loud doesn't override lawful." He began reviewing the documents, title records, occupancy statements, property tax receipts, all under my name. For the first time in a very long time, my life's paperwork became my sword and shield rather than a stack of forgotten files. When he finished, he tapped the folder with a deliberate rhythm. "You're on solid ground, Celia. Legally speaking, this is straightforward. Emotionally, that's trickier." I nodded. "I know." "Are you prepared for their calls, messages, attempts to guilt you?" "I've already been preparing," I said. "Silence will be my boundary." Andrew leaned back, studying me. "All right then, tell me your next move." I inhaled slowly, feeling the plan crystallize in my chest. "I want everything that's in my name separated from their daily life, immediately." His brow lifted. "Utilities?" "All of them," I said. The fiber internet, the cable, the extra grocery card they use, the landline they never answer unless it benefits them. If my name is on it, I want it temporarily suspended. Suspended, he repeated, pulling out a pad to take notes. Not canceled. Yes, when the house is mine again, I'll restore what I actually need. He nodded. This will disrupt things for them. That's the intention, I said calmly. I've been subsidizing their comfort for years while shrinking myself. I'm done shrinking. There was a brief silence, one of mutual understanding, not hesitation. Andrew slid his phone across the table to me. If you want, you can make the calls from here. No distractions, no interruptions. I took the phone with a steady hand. The first call was the internet provider. Good afternoon. I'm the account holder. I'd like to suspend service at my home address. The second was the cable company. Yes, the sports package too. The third was the bank. I need to deactivate the supplementary card issued to Mara Rowan. Yes, effective now. Each deactivation felt like a cord being cut, quietly, precisely, without drama. Andrew watched, his expression unreadable but respectful. When I finished, I set the phone down gently. You know, most people wait years before taking their power back. You did it in one night. I smiled, not triumphant, but certain. I didn't take it back. I just stopped giving it away. My own phone buzzed again and again in my purse. Notifications, missed calls, messages I didn't need to read. They've already noticed, Andrew said. I know, but I didn't reach for the phone. I didn't have to, because the next step, one I'd quietly prepared for years, was about to cut deeper than the Wi-Fi, and it would be the declined purchase at a butcher shop an hour later that finally pushed Trent past the point of silence and into a panic he could no longer hide. After leaving Sterling's office, I took a short walk to clear my mind. The downtown air held a crisp bite, the kind that sharpens your thoughts and straightens your back. I passed small storefronts, the scent of roasted coffee drifting from a corner cafe, until I reached the mall, bright, polished, humming with life. I wasn't there to shop for pleasure. I was there to change uniforms. Inside a boutique, a young clerk approached with a friendly smile. Looking for anything in particular today? Yes, I said. Something that makes me look like I know exactly what I'm doing. Her smile widened. Then let's find it. She guided me through tailored blouses, structured jackets, simple, elegant pants. When I stepped into the fitting room, I stared at the version of myself reflected in the mirror, the same posture I had worn for years, slightly curved inward as if apologizing for existing. But when I slipped into the soft beige blazer and dark slacks, something shifted. My shoulders lifted, my chin rose. It wasn't vanity, it was recognition. This was the woman who had once managed budgets, negotiated contracts, handled property transfers. A woman who didn't tremble at raised voices. A woman who understood the power of signatures and silence. A woman who had simply been buried under years of compromise. I purchased the new outfit and handed the clerk my old clothes to donate. She folded them gently, unaware of how symbolic that small gesture truly was. A clean start always begins with something you leave behind. Afterward, I went upstairs to a quiet restaurant and ordered mushroom risotto and a glass of white wine. I kept my phone face down beside me, refusing to let it pull me back into the old rhythm of reacting, of bracing myself for someone else's storm. Halfway through the meal, the phone buzzed once, then again, then continuously. I didn't need to look to know what had happened, but I did anyway. Bank alert. Transaction declined, $92.70. Merchant, High Meadow Butcher Shop. I exhaled through my nose, unsurprised. Prime ribeye. He always needed his victory steaks, even when there was nothing to celebrate. I sipped my wine and continued eating, relishing the rich, earthy flavors. Then the messages came in a rush. Trent. What the hell? The card isn't working. Fix it. Mara. Mom, something's wrong with the bank. Did you change something? Trent. Call them right now. This is ridiculous. I set the phone aside and ate another slow bite of risotto. The freedom wasn't in punishing him. It was in the choice, the simple, quiet choice to not respond. 5 minutes later, the phone rang. Not buzzed, rang. I answered. Trent didn't even say hello. "What did you do? Why's the card frozen? Why's the internet down? You're being dramatic, Celia. Fix it." I lifted the napkin to my lips, dabbed lightly, and replied with a calmness that startled even me. "It's not broken, Trent. I turned it off." A beat of stunned silence. "Turn it back on," he said, voice trembling with controlled fury. "I need the Wi-Fi. Mara needs the card. You're making a scene." "I'm eating lunch, simply. Everything else will remain off until the house is mine again." "This isn't funny." "I didn't intend it to be." "Oh, you think you're clever? You think you can embarrass me like this?" His voice pitched upward, cracking at the edges. The panic was finally pushing through the arrogance. "That's your interpretation, but the truth is simpler. I no longer fund the lifestyle of people who treat me like a burden." I ended the call before he could swallow me with another tirade. The quiet that followed was sweeter than dessert. I paid my bill, walked through the mall with my shoulders back, and returned to the hotel for an hour of rest. But peace rarely lasts long when someone like Trent realizes he can no longer control the ground beneath his feet. Because that evening, as the hotel's room phone rang sharply through the quiet, I learned that Mara was on her way, and she wasn't coming with anger, she was coming with fear. The hotel room phone startled me awake, its crisp ring cutting through the late afternoon stillness. I blinked, gathered my thoughts, and answered. "Miss Rowan," the receptionist asked, "your daughter is in the lobby. She says it's urgent." Of course she was. Panic always arrives before accountability. "I'll be right down," I said calmly, slipping into my new blazer. By the time I reached the lobby, Mara was pacing like a frightened bird, tugging at the hem of her wrinkled blouse. Her eyes were red, her breathing shallow. When she spotted me, she froze, not walking toward me, not stepping back, just suspended between guilt and habit. "Mama," her voice cracked, "what are you doing? The internet's gone. The cable won't turn on. The card isn't working. Trent's losing his mind. We look ridiculous at the store. People were watching." I gestured toward a nearby armchair. "Sit. We'll talk without an audience." She sat, perched on the edge like someone waiting for a verdict. I took the chair opposite, crossing my legs and folding my hands, steady, composed, not cruel. "Mama, please." Her words tumbled out in a whisper. "This is getting out of hand. Trent says you're making us look like beggars. He says you're being spiteful." Suspending services registered in my name is not spite. It's alignment. Alignment? Yes, I said. My resources should serve me, not enable disrespect. She swallowed hard, eyes flickering with confusion. "He apologized, you know. He said he didn't mean what he said yesterday." I tilted my head. Did he apologize for calling me a useless old woman, or did he apologize because the Wi-Fi died? Her silence answered for her. "Listen," she said finally, leaning forward. "You can't really mean to push us out. We've lived there for years. You can't just evict us." "I can," I said softly, "because it's my house, and because I have endured 4 years of being treated like an inconvenience inside the home I paid for, maintained, and cherished." Mara flinched. "You think I don't feel awful about that? But Trent, he's stressed. He has deadlines. You know how he gets." "Yes, I know exactly how he gets. I also know how you shrink when he does." Her jaw trembled, tears welled, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't reach across to soothe her. Some lessons only sprout in silence. "Mama," her voice cracked, "if we leave the house, he said he might leave me. He says without the house, everything falls apart." I inhaled slowly. There it was, the truth she'd been swallowing like a stone. "If your marriage depends on my property, then it's not a marriage, it's a lease." She sucked in a breath, wounded. "You're being so harsh." "I'm being precise. Harshness is shouting someone into their bedroom. Precision is stating what's real. Her shoulders shuddered. I don't know what to do. You don't have to know today. Tomorrow at 10, we'll all meet with Mr. Sterling. Trent can bring his opinions. I will bring the deed. She wiped her cheeks with the back of her hand. Can you at least turn the internet back on tonight? Just tonight, so he calms down. No, I said firmly. She stared at me, truly stared, searching for the softness I used to wrap around her like a blanket. Mama, you've changed. Not changed, returned. She stood, swayed slightly, and steadied herself. Fine, I'll be at the meeting. I know. She hesitated, then asked in a smaller voice, Can I hug you? Yes, I said, as my daughter, not as a tenant. She hugged me tightly, then walked out into the cool night air, not looking back, but not walking confidently either, somewhere between breaking and rebuilding. I watched her go, then returned to my room, exhaling slowly. The night wrapped around me like a calm blanket, but I sensed the shifting tides beneath it. Because tomorrow, the truth wouldn't just be spoken, it would be documented. And when Trent stormed into that conference room the next morning, he would discover that paper, cold, factual paper, can strip a man's bravado faster than any argument ever could. The conference room at Sterling and Hartwell was kept cold enough to sharpen anyone's nerves. Frosty air hummed softly from a vent above the long mahogany table, and the city skyline glimmered through floor-to-ceiling windows. I took the seat at the head of the table, the one with natural authority, not courtesy, and set my folder neatly before me. Inside were the documents that had always held the truth, even when I was too quiet to act on it. Title deed, property tax records, ownership affidavits, a copy of the 30-day notice. Paper, the most loyal witness. Andrew Sterling sat on my right side, calm and composed as he arranged his notes. Remember, he murmured, you speak only when you choose to. Let the facts do the heavy lifting. I intend to, I replied. A knock on the door interrupted us. The paralegal poked her head in. They're here. The air shifted. Trent stormed in first, looking like he had fought with his closet and lost, shirt wrinkled, tie crooked, eyes puffy from what I suspected were equal parts rage and sleeplessness. Mara followed quietly, clutching her purse to her chest, gaze fixed on the carpet as if reading instructions there. I yanked a chair back, scraping the floor loud enough to make a statement. Are we done with the theatrics now? He barked. This is ridiculous. Andrew leaned forward, voice level. Mr. Kavanaugh, please keep your tone respectful inside this office. Trent scoffed. Sure, whatever. Let's get this over with. I slid the notice toward him. The terms are simple. 30 days to vacate. We live there, he snapped. That gives us rights. Not ownership, I corrected gently. You've contributed nothing towards the property. Legally, you were occupying with my permission. That permission is now withdrawn. He pointed a shaking finger at me. You can't do this to family. Family doesn't tell me to go to my room like a misbehaving toddler, I said coolly. Family doesn't demand control of a house they don't pay for. And family doesn't scream over prime rib when a card declines. Mara winced as if struck. Andrew opened his folder. Mr. Kavanaugh, your situation is not complicated. You have no lease, you pay no rent, and Ms. Rowan has the right to terminate permissive use at any time. You were served properly. Failure to vacate will result in a formal eviction and the recovery of back rent at market value. Back rent? Trent's voice cracked. You can't be serious. She wouldn't do that. I raised an eyebrow. Wouldn't I? He laughed bitterly. You're unbelievable. We've been saving up. We have plans, investments. That was the moment I set my own folder down in front of him, an envelope I'd retrieved from my file cabinet months ago, back when I first suspected something wasn't adding up. I believe you're referring to these investments, I said quietly. I slid out 3 printed notices, loan defaults, overdue statements, and, most damning of all, a margin call showing his trading account at less than 0. Mara's breath hitched sharply. Trent, What is this? He snatched the papers, eyes darting rapidly over the numbers. It's temporary. It's all temporary. I was going to fix it. You were gambling, I said plainly, with borrowed money, and apparently with your marriage. He slammed the papers onto the table. You had no right to dig into this. I didn't dig, I replied. Your creditors mailed them to my address, because my address is your mailing address, because you never updated anything, because you assumed I'd never open envelopes with your name on them. Mara stared at the papers, face draining of color. You told me we had savings. We did, until the market dipped and your precious mother shut off every— Enough, Andrew interjected firmly. This meeting is about occupancy of a property you do not own. Trent slumped back into his chair, sweat collecting at his temples. His bravado was leaking out of him like steam escaping a cracked pipe. Ms. Rowan, please confirm your terms. I folded my hands. 30 days, utilities remain off. No shouting when I retrieve belongings. After 30 days, locks will be changed. Silence. Then Mara whispered, Mama, what happens to us after? That depends on the choices you make, not the ones he makes for you. Trent pushed back his chair so abruptly it nearly toppled. We're leaving. This is insane. Correct, I said calmly, and in 30 days you will be leaving permanently. He froze mid-step, his fury draining into something closer to dread. Because as they walked out of that room, him boiling, her trembling, neither of them knew that their unraveling had only just begun, and that Mara's next phone call to me wouldn't come from home, but from a parking lot where she'd reached a breaking point. Leaving the law office, I didn't rush. Trent barreled out ahead of Mara, grumbling curses under his breath, punching the elevator button like it owed him money. She followed a few reluctant steps behind, her shoulders curved inward as if trying to fold herself into nothingness. I watched them disappear behind closing doors before I even moved. I knew the look on her face, a woman trying to pretend her world isn't cracking under her feet. I stepped outside into the cool afternoon air. The city was alive with honking cars, distant construction noise, and people arguing about trivial things. Yet, for the first time in a long time, I felt steady, like someone who had stopped being tossed around by other people's storms. I found a quiet cafe, ordered a cup of herbal tea, and sat by a window where sunlight pooled across the table. I was halfway through my cup when my phone vibrated. Once, twice, then again and again in rapid succession. Finally, it rang. Mara. I answered only after the third ring. Yes? Her voice was raw. Mama, I'm outside, in the parking lot. I didn't get in the car. I set my cup down. Where's Trent? In the car, she said shakily. He's screaming, banging the steering wheel. He told me to get in or he'd leave me there like an idiot. I walked away. A long silence stretched between us. Not heavy, just honest. Good, I said softly. You chose quiet over chaos. That matters. She sniffed, voice trembling. He said you ruined everything. He said you want to tear us apart. Suspending Wi-Fi doesn't break a marriage. Lies do. Debt does. Screaming does. Control does. Another shaky breath. It hurts, Mama. Of course it does, I said. You're finally seeing clearly. Clarity always stings at first. I heard the hum of cars around her, a distant slam of a car door, footsteps somewhere behind her. She was outside the office building, alone, frightened, and newly aware of a truth she had never let herself name. Mama, he said if we don't have your house, he doesn't want to be with me. I felt a firm wave of calm wash over me. Then it was never love, Mara. It was a lease with emotional rent. She let out a broken sound, part cry, part bitter laugh. I think I knew, deep down, but hearing it, it hurts. I know, but hurt is not the same as being wrong. Sometimes it's the first step to being right. Another pause, then, very small, Can I come to the hotel? I just don't want to be yelled at tonight. No, I said gently but firmly. A startled breath. No? Not as a place to hide, I clarified, but you can sit with me in the lobby like an adult and decide your next step. After a long, trembling pause, she whispered, "Okay, I'm coming." I waited outside the hotel beneath the golden lights that glowed along the awning. She arrived 20 minutes later, shoulders slumped, eyes swollen, clutching her purse as though it contained the last pieces of herself. She sat beside me on a bench outside the hotel entrance. I didn't hug her immediately. She didn't lean in. We just breathed the same air for a while, finally, without shouting, crowding between us. After several minutes, she said the words I had been waiting to hear for years. "I don't want to go back to that house. Not tonight. Maybe not ever." And just like that, the first real fracture of her old life appeared. Not violent, not loud, but slow and inevitable, like ice beginning to split under the first warm sun of spring. But neither of us knew that before dawn, Trent would make one final attempt to regain control, and that this time he'd choose a tactic far more desperate than raised voices or financial manipulation. Mara stayed at the hotel only long enough to steady her breathing. She didn't ask to come to my room, she simply sat in the lobby armchair across from me, hands wrapped around a cup of chamomile tea the receptionist offered with quiet sympathy. The hotel hummed with soft music and murmured conversations, a world far away from slammed doors, flaring tempers, and the cracked steering wheel Trent had been punching. At almost 10, she stood. "I'm going to stay with Zoe tonight. She has a spare cot." "That's a good choice," I said. She nodded, trembled once, and then left. And for the first time in years, she walked away from me with a straight back, not proud, not confident, but no longer folding herself to fit inside someone else's rage. The night passed quietly. I slept soundly, and in the morning, I went through a ritual I hadn't followed in decades. A slow breakfast, a warm shower, and a deliberate choice of clothing. My new blazer, pressed neatly on the hanger like a small declaration of order. At 10, I met with Andrew Sterling again. We reviewed the final paperwork, the cover letters, Roman's authority, the timeline. It was all clean, precise, airtight. "Today," he said, "you simply wait. Roman will handle everything." I left the office feeling lighter, the sun warming my shoulders as I walked down the street. The day had a clarity to it, the kind that comes after a heavy storm, when the sky is rinsed clean. I decided to spend the afternoon at a spa. Steam, water, silence. I let it all sink in, every boundary drawn, every cord cut, every document signed. Near noon, my phone buzzed. "Roman. Miss Rowan, I'm at your property. Moving truck is here. They're starting." I replied with a simple, "Proceed." No trembling, no regret, no guilt. Just order. By 12:30, another message. "Roman. They have vacated. Keys surrendered. Inventory complete. The house is empty." I stared at that final line for a long moment. The house is empty. Not abandoned, not violated, just cleared, like an overgrown garden finally weeded. When I arrived back at the property later that afternoon, the gate key turned with quiet ease. No barking voices, no invasive presence, just the creak of metal and the soft whisper of wind through the garden. Inside, the silence hit me first. Not the uneasy silence of tension held in the walls, but the open, breathable quiet of a space no longer under siege. The family room was bare. Indentations on the floor marked where their furniture had sat, a couple of holes from poorly removed mounts, a faint smell of stale air and old arguments. I wiped down the framed print of the harbor and rehung it where it felt right, not where someone else insisted it belonged. The house responded in kind. With every wipe, every breath, every sweep of the mop, the space warmed and brightened, like a home exhaling for the first time in years. By early evening, the rooms glowed softly, the floors smelled faintly of lemon polish, the kitchen tile gleamed. The stale air had been replaced with something gentler, a breeze that slipped through the curtains like a sigh of relief. Then, at precisely 6, a soft knock at the door broke the hush. I didn't flinch, not this time. I already knew who it was. Mara, standing with tentative hope in her eyes, carrying not a suitcase, not demands, only a desire to speak. And this conversation, unlike all the ones before, would take place in a house that finally belonged to itself again. But Mara wasn't the only one who needed help, because the very next afternoon, 3 women from the neighborhood would show up at my door, terrified of their own children, and I would realize my story was only the beginning of something much bigger. The next day unfolded with a kind of peaceful momentum, like a river finally returning to its natural course. My house smelled of lemon polish, fresh air, and something gentler. Possibility. With the windows open and the peach-colored walls glowing in the afternoon light, the place felt awake again. At precisely 4 o'clock, the doorbell chimed. Zoe stood at the threshold, her floral scarf fluttering nervously. With her were Olga, stern as always, and Betty, shoulders folded inward like a wilted flower. Her eyes were puffy, her hands shaky, and her voice barely a whisper. "My son wants me to sign the house over to him," Betty murmured as they entered. "He says it's for investment, so he can buy me something better later. He's pushing hard." I led them to the kitchen table where I had already set out a pot of tea, cups, blank paper, envelopes, and a stack of pens. Little did they know, I had been preparing for this conversation since long before my own ordeal began. "Sit," I said gently. "Let's make sense of the things scaring you." Betty lowered herself into a chair, trembling. "He says I'm being ungrateful, that I'm making things harder for him. He says if I trusted him, I'd just sign." I poured the tea slowly. "And if he trusted you, he wouldn't ask you to give up the roof over your head." Betty bit her lip. "I don't want to lose him." "You won't, but you will lose your house if you signed it away. And once it's gone, Betty, it is gone forever. Children can be loved without inheriting early." Her eyes widened slightly, hope or maybe realization. Olga leaned forward. What should she tell him? I slid a piece of paper toward Betty. On it, I had written a simple sentence in firm handwriting. "I'm not ready to change ownership. To think about it, maybe. To sign, no." "You'll repeat this," I said gently, "exactly as written. No explanations, no panic. If he yells, leave the room. Go water the plants. Do not continue the argument." Zoe nodded vigorously, like a script. "A boundary," I corrected. "A script becomes useless the moment someone yells. A boundary stays." We spent the next hour going over basics, wills instead of gift deeds, how to maintain separate accounts, why passwords should never be shared for convenience, and how to document every loan, even to family. They took notes diligently, hands moving with renewed determination. These rules aren't harsh, they're survival. They're the difference between love and dependency. By the time we finished, Betty's shoulders were no longer hunched. She sat upright, fingers wrapped around her warm teacup. "You know," she whispered, "I thought I was the only one scared to say no." That's how fear works, quietly, shamefully, alone. But the moment one woman says no, 10 others remember they can too. When they left, their steps were lighter. They thanked me, not dramatically, not tearfully, but with the kind of gratitude that comes from having found a spine they thought they'd lost. As the door closed behind them, I exhaled into my quiet house. This silence wasn't lonely. It was purposeful. It was mine. At 8, Mara knocked, gently, like a visitor, not a dependent. She stepped inside with a cautious smile. "I'm settling into the studio. It's small, but it's mine. And today I filed for divorce." I nodded. "Good. Not because I told you to, but because you decided it." She took a seat in the family room, her gaze roaming the peach walls, the polished floor, the warm lamplight. The place felt different in here, she said softly. It is different. It finally reflects the person who lives here. We shared quiet tea. No shouting, no tension. Just two adults learning each other again. Later, after she left, I sat in my old green armchair and opened a fresh page in my notebook. I titled it, Wednesday at 4, Women's Boundaries Group. Not a club, not a committee, just a meeting for anyone who needed a place to speak without being silenced. I closed the notebook feeling a warmth that went beyond the tea, a warmth that came from reclaiming not just my house, but my place in it. That night, I picked up the TV remote, the same one that had once symbolized my silence, and turned on the music channel. Violins filled the room softly. No one turned it off, no one yelled. I set the volume exactly where I liked it. Not louder, not quieter, just right. And for the first time in years, the house breathed with me.